Friends, I've got a serious question for you. How long did it take you to get good at what you do? Now, I don't know what it is you do. I speak primarily to appraisers and agents and lenders, but whatever you do, how long? 5 years, 10, maybe 20? And of course, we can't ask that question without also asking, what did it cost you? Not just in the money, although we both know that that can add up fast depending on what it is we're talking about, but what did it cost you in time, in life energy, in relationships and enjoyment, things that you had to put off? What did it cost you in early mornings and late nights, in opportunities that you passed up, in relationships that maybe took a back seat while you built your expertise? Because the reality of the journey toward mastery is that you've paid a price to get where you are, and you should be proud of that. We all should. And since that journey never really ends, well, of course, those costs are going to continue. But here's the question that's going to sting a little bit. What is that expertise worth right now, today, in a world where anyone with $20 and an internet connection can get a better answer to most professional questions than they could have gotten from the best expert in the field 10 years ago? And you all know why. Because that's essentially what just happened. And the people who keep telling themselves that, well, AI can't do what I do are going to walk straight into what I've been warning about for many years. It's called the expert trap or expertise trap. Except now AI just made that trap 10 times more dangerous. Friends, if we haven't met yet, my name is Blaine, and I appreciate you being here. I'm a serial entrepreneur, an investor, an appraisal firm owner, a former Zen monk, and I've been teaching on this topic of expertise versus authority for a couple decades now. And in fact, I did a whole episode, a podcast episode a while back on the difference between being an expert and being an authority and why those matter. Some of you may have heard it if you listen to the podcast. Most of you probably didn't implement anything from it, and that's fine, because free information often doesn't change anything until it becomes action. And since less than 3% of people ever really take any action on anything, even when they know they need to, I'm not going to hold my breath that you're in that 3%. But today, we're revisiting the topic because the ground has been shifting in a big way, and in a way that makes this conversation 10 times more urgent than it was when I first brought it up. Because AI didn't just create a new tool that people are plinking around with, although there's a lot of people just kind of plinking around with it. No, it commoditized expertise to a large degree. Because the knowledge that you spent years building, it's now available to anyone almost instantly for basically nothing. So if your entire value proposition rests on the fact that you know things that other people don't know, well, the foundation of that has some major cracks in it, and it's crumbling underneath your feet, underneath all of our feet. But here's the good news, and this is exactly why I'm doing this episode. There is something that AI absolutely cannot touch, something that's not losing value. And in fact, I would say because of AI, it's probably gaining value rapidly. And if you understand the distinction between what's being commoditized and what's becoming priceless, well, then you've got one of the biggest competitive advantages available in today's economy. Now, I'm going to ask you to stick with me on this because this one really matters. Let's be honest and specific about what happened here, because most people have just a basic surface level understanding without grasping the full magnitude. But before we do, I think it's important that you know that I consider myself an AI realist, if you will. I'm not one of those doom and gloom guys talking about how AI is going to take your job in the next year, and that the whole appraisal profession or the real estate profession or the lending or legal professions are doomed because of it. The appraisal profession specifically, that's what I do, might be doomed, but not because of artificial intelligence. If anything, AI may accelerate and amplify some of those cracks in the profession, but I don't think you're going to be out of work next year because of AI. AI didn't just make Google faster and more convenient. And it didn't just automate a lot of low-level tasks, although it has done that. What large language models, LLMs like ChatGPT and Claude and others actually did was take decades, in some cases, centuries of accumulated human knowledge and make it available essentially to anyone instantly for almost nothing, in some cases, nothing. Now think about what that means in practice. Right now, today, you can ask AI to explain very complex, say, tax strategy with the depth of a seasoned CPA. You can ask it to review a legal contract the way a sharp attorney would. You can ask it to diagnose symptoms, build financial models, write production level computer code, design marketing funnels, and develop business plans, or explain the nuances of almost any professional discipline. And it will do all those things, often very impressively well, maybe not always, but you can do it right now for essentially $20 a month. Now, is it flawless? No, of course not. It gets stuff wrong all the time. Does it hallucinate and get things wrong? Always. Absolutely. Is it a perfect substitute for a brilliant human expert in every situation? No, not yet. But here's what matters. It's good enough for a huge percentage of use cases. And it's improving, of course, every month in many ways at a rate that's genuinely difficult to comprehend. Now, again, I'm an AI realist. If you've watched any of my prior videos, I talk all the time about how AI is screwing things up, and it's not the doom and gloom that everybody's selling us is going to take over your job and everybody's going to be jobless in the next year or two. No, it's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm a realist in that I see the value that it does have. I see what it's good for and good at. In fact, I had a coaching student last month, SRA designation, which in the appraisal industry is a very high level, almost like a master's degree, 20 plus years in complex high-end residential and commercial appraisal work, an absolute expert in his field. And he called me because a potential client called him and told him they did some preliminary analysis using AI before reaching out to this appraiser. And now they're questioning his fee, not because his work isn't good, but because they got 70% of the answer for free. And so now, of course, they're wondering if the last 30% is worth what he's charging. Now, I can tell you it probably is, especially if they need that signed appraisal document. But this seems to be the direction some things are heading. And of course, we've recently seen stories about people who've utilized AI to handle the sale of their home over using a licensed agent and saving the 6 to 7% commission, whatever it is in your area. Now, I know if I was selling my home today and I could save 5 to 7% of a big number, I would absolutely be doing that and using AI to walk me through the negotiations, the title, and the closing process. All I have to do is prompt it with the opening line, something like, act as a veteran, top producing real estate agent in this particular market and walk me through the process of X, selling my own home. And that's the squeeze. It's happening right now across every knowledge-based profession because the realistic cost of knowledge and expertise in many domains is effectively zero, because what AI is doing to some degree is commoditizing expertise. The information, the analysis, the technical output, all of that is increasingly available to anybody with a subscription. And most of those subscriptions cost $0 for the free version. And then you move up to the $20 or the $100 or the $200 model to do more complex tasks and things like coding. So if your entire value proposition rests on being the person who knows things that other people don't know, or being the person who thinks that they can do other things that other people can't do, that foundation is cracking. Now, before you shut off this video and you go have an existential crisis, I want you to stay with me because this is where it gets kind of interesting. As many of you know, I studied Aikido and Zen and Judo and Kendo, a bunch of martial arts for many, many decades. And in Aikido and Judo both, there's a concept called kazushi, which means to break your opponent's balance before you do some kind of throw or technique. The throw itself is easy once the balance is broken. You can have, in fact, perfect technique or a flawless form, years of practice on your mechanics, but none of it matters if you haven't broken that balance first. That's kazushi. Most students in martial arts focus all of their energy on, say, perfecting the throw. They drill the movements over and over. They obsess about technical precision, but the throw is just the aftermath, the end result, if you will, of everything going right in the lead up to that moment. In fact, I used to say when teaching Aikido all the time, create the circumstances that allow the throws or the techniques to unfold naturally as they should, as opposed to trying to muscle them or make them happen. Because the real work happens before all of that, in positioning, in reading your opponent's weight distribution, in timing, and in creating the opening that makes the throw inevitable. Again, the phrase I used to use was, your job is not to do the technique. It is instead to create the circumstances that allow the technique to unfold naturally. In fact, I would go so far as to say this is just good general life advice. Your job isn't to do everything. It's to create the circumstances that allow things to unfold naturally. And friends, that's what AI just did to expertise, essentially. It broke the balance, and it's creating a new set of circumstances that are unfolding in a way that many are completely ignoring and will remain ignorant to until there's a complete disruption to their life and to their business. All the technical perfection, all the studying, all the hours, years, and dollars that you've been building, the forms, the mechanics, the knowledge base, the credentials, that essentially, to martial arts terms, was the throw. And it mattered when you had balance, but the ground just shifted and you're still focused on perfecting your technical expertise while your foundational positioning is gone. And when that's gone, you're going to be thrown. Although the surface you land on is unlikely to be as soft and as forgiving as an Aikido or a Judo mat. Friends, authority is the new balance point. And if you can't fake it with better technique, what are you going to do? I've been making this distinction for years, and in a pre-AI artificial intelligence world, you could probably get away with blurring the line between them. In the world we're in right now, that distinction is everything. An expert is someone who has accumulated deep knowledge and skill in a particular domain, usually a fairly narrow one. They know a lot. They've studied a lot. They've put in the hours. They can answer difficult questions and solve complex problems and produce high quality technical output. Expertise is fundamentally about what you know and what you can do. And as long as you stay up on any changes in that domain, well, then you're typically respected as an expert for as long as your expertise matters to someone. On a side note, typically you never call yourself an expert. You let other people call you an expert of a domain. Nevertheless, the problem is that the number of people who value expertise alone is diminishing quickly because of AI. I, for one, am someone who will immediately go to all the AI models I utilize on a daily basis to become the fledgling expert on a particular area of interest. I do it all the time, and I'm sure a lot of you do as well. Am I truly the expert after a couple hours of study? Of course not. But I've just devalued the domain expert's market value by some factor, whatever that is, if we're going to do business together, because I've already studied all the language. I've adopted their language, their history. I know their weaknesses, and I know their selling points and their objection handling techniques and tactics, if it comes down to that. That's what an expert is. An authority, on the other hand, it's something categorically different. An authority is someone who has earned the genuine trust, respect, and belief of a different group of people. An authority is someone whose perspective and judgment people actually seek out. Not because they're the only one who can produce the answer, because we know AI can as well, but because people trust them specifically to interpret it, to filter it, to apply it, and to tell them what it means for their specific situation. Expertise versus authority is vastly different. And authority is someone whose voice carries weight beyond the raw information that they're sharing. Expertise, on the other hand, is about what you know. Authority is about who knows you. Expertise is about leveraging what you know to make money, to make a living, while authority is about being trusted, respected, remembered, revered, and sought after for more than your expertise in a particular area. And here's the insight that I think is going to define the winners and the losers over the next decade, probably much sooner. AI can replicate expertise. It cannot replicate authority. And I want you to think about it carefully, because you can go to Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT right now and get a technically accurate answer to almost any question in your professional field. And again, I'm not advising you to do that because it gets stuff wrong all the time and hallucinates. And I know it just says things to make you feel good, but you can still get a fairly technically accurate answer to a lot of questions. But do you trust it in the way you trust a mentor that you followed for, say, 5 years? Do you act on the advice from ChatGPT the way you would act on guidance from someone who has been exactly where you are, made the mistakes that you're, of course, trying to avoid, and come out on the other side better for the experience? Do you feel accountable to AI? Does it know your story? Does it know what you've already tried and what you haven't? Of course not. That connection, that trust, and that relationship is built between human beings over time through consistent presence, through shared values, through demonstrated track records, and of course, genuine care for the people being served. AI cannot manufacture that. There is no shortcut to it, and there's no algorithm for it, and there never will be. It doesn't matter how sentient or alive some people believe AI to be. It's never going to be human. And that, my friends, is where authority lives. That is the territory that AI cannot touch. That's where your leverage is. And here's what I think most people are completely missing in the AI conversation. It's actually good news if you're paying attention, because AI is flooding the world with information and expertise around every corner. The value of a trusted human voice, friends, is going up, not down. Think about what the internet did to information, say in the 1990s and early 2000s. Before the internet, if you wanted to know something specific, what did you do? You went to the library. You had to find a book. You had to call the library or track down an expert. Information was scarce, and scarcity meant value. Well, then the internet comes along and it made information essentially infinite. Suddenly you could find an answer to almost any question within a few searches. Did that make all information worthless? No. Did it make libraries worthless? No. What it actually did was shift away from raw information and toward two things: curation and trust. Because in a world with unlimited information, the people who became incredibly valuable were the ones who could identify what actually mattered, the nuance, the edge cases, and they could filter out the noise. They could synthesize it into something actionable and deliver it to the right people in a way that those people could actually understand and use. That's always been valuable and useful. It's just becoming more valuable and more useful. And that's exactly how, say, bloggers and podcasters and YouTubers and newsletter writers built multi-million-dollar businesses out of free information. It was already publicly available. And AI today, friends, is doing the same thing to expertise, but at a far higher order of magnitude and at far greater speed. There's now more professional knowledge available to more people at lower costs than at any point in human history. And just like the internet made raw information cheap while making trusted voices more valuable, AI is making raw expertise cheap while making trusted human authority more valuable. People don't just want information. They never did. They want to know what to do with that information. They want an outcome. They want context. They want someone whose judgment they trust to look them in the eye and say, here's what this means for you specifically, given where you are, given what you have already tried, given what I know about you. And this is not something AI can provide. I know it learns you and it starts to get to know you, and it can produce some pretty compelling answers that makes it seem like it's alive and like it knows you, but it doesn't, at least not today. And I suspect it will never be able to truly do that as well as a real human being can. So yes, AI is disrupting expertise, but it's simultaneously creating what I think is the greatest opportunity for authority builders that has ever existed. The question is whether you're going to be one of them. So I want to talk about what actually happens to the people who don't make this shift, because I've watched it happen up close in multiple industries, and it's not going to be a gentle landing. Because what is happening is something of, let's call it a slow squeeze. Although that slow squeeze is definitely speeding up. It doesn't happen just overnight. It happens gradually, almost imperceptibly at first, and then very quickly all at once. The prices you used to be able to charge start, of course, facing more pressure. Clients who used to rely on you exclusively start saying they did some research or they used a tool to get preliminary answers before calling you. The number of people who reach out to you without being referred by somebody who already trusts you starts to decline. You find yourself having to justify your rates against competitors who are using AI to maybe undercut you. And here's the irony. The more technically skilled you are, the worse this gets. Because the more value that is tied to your technical expertise alone, the more exposed you are to AI commoditization, you becoming a commodity. the best coders, the most knowledgeable attorney, the most technically proficient financial analyst, the best appraiser. All of these people are more at risk than the person who has built genuine authority with a specific audience, regardless of their technical level and ability. I've seen it before, not with AI specifically, but with the general principle. In fact, I've been teaching on this for decades. Build an audience first. Build a group of people that know you, like you, and trust you. I've watched incredibly talented professionals get outcompeted, not because someone was better than them at the technical work, but because that someone had built better relationships, a stronger reputation, a clearer voice, the ability to articulate a point and create an outcome. They had authority. And when it came time for, say, a client to choose, they chose the person they trusted, not because the person necessarily was objectively the most skilled. And again, I've been saying it for years to all the people who think that in the appraisal industry, an SRA or an MAI designation is the reason people choose them. In some instances, of course it is. But to place all your faith in that alone as your main marketing pillar for so many years has put some of you in an awkward position of having to defend all those years of schooling and the tens of thousands of dollars to get those three little letters after their name. The same thing has been done with college degrees, master's degrees, and doctorates. In fact, I'll prove it to you right here now. If you want to download this prompt and feed it into your AI platform of choice, I'll put it in the description section of this video. Just copy and paste it into whatever AI model you'd like to use. If you want to become like an SRA in the appraisal industry, just copy the prompt. Essentially, you're just going to ask ChatGPT or Claude or one of those that you want to understand the SRA designation at depth, equivalent to somebody who has completed the full curriculum. And I'll post in the description section the prompt. You can paste it and see what you get. Those of you who use AI on the regular, this should be an easy one for you. Those of you who are feeling a bit behind because you've, say, been using ChatGPT to ask it for answers that you can get on Google, well, I challenge you to use this exercise as a way to kind of go deeper on the potential use case and use cases for AI. Now, will the response that you get from AI make you an SRA in the appraisal industry? Well, of course not. You'd still have to do lots of study and practice. The point was not to make you an SRA with this exercise. It was to show you that if you take the time to plumb the depths of the capability of AI that it already has in its mere infancy, you understand that? We are at the beginning of all this. Well, then you're going to find that expertise today is not what it was even a year or two ago. Friends, the point is simple. Expertise alone is no longer a moat. We talk about moats in the Appraiser Increase Academy all the time. It used to be a moat. It simply isn't anymore. That SRA credential, that master's degree, that PhD used to signal, I know things that you don't. Now it signals, I paid for things that you can Google. Because authority is the new moat, friends, and building it takes time, which means the best time to start was last year. The next best time to start is right now. So let's get into the framework. Knowing the difference between expert and authority doesn't automatically make you one. And I've never been a fan of leaving people with a problem and no path forward. So here are the 4 pillars of authority that I've seen work consistently for me across industries, business models, and of course, audience sizes. Pillar 1, develop a clear and teachable point of view. Friends, authorities don't sit on the fence. Sometimes experts do. Authorities don't hedge every statement. They don't say, well, it depends, and then give you 17 equally weighted options without telling you what they actually think. As soon as you hear somebody stumbling or stammering and kind of waffling on their answers, they should have given considerable thought too long before ever being asked, well, then your confidence in them as an expert is dead. No, think through who you are as an authority and develop a teachable point of view. AI hedges. It sees all sides. It's the world's fastest and most sophisticated fence sitter, which means anyone willing to actually take a position and defend it immediately stands out. Experts tell you what the options are. Authorities unequivocally tell you what they think you should do and why. That's a big separator. Experts speak from what they know. Authorities speak to develop influence, create impact, and make some kind of difference. Remember, create a result. Take people somewhere from where they want to be to, from where they are to where they want to be. So if you've been playing it safe in your content, maybe, or your conversations, your professional positioning, that bad habit is quietly keeping you in the expert lane when you need to build in the authority lane. Take a position, for goodness sake. Argue for it with intelligence and passion. Stand behind it when it's challenged and leave people with something to think about after their interaction with you. That's how you differentiate as an authority as opposed to just being an expert. That's pillar 1. Develop an opinion of value, develop a teachable point of view. Pillar 2, show your work. Consistently, over time, authority is not built in a single impressive moment. It's built through consistent presence over time. A video every week on a YouTube platform, a newsletter every Tuesday, a podcast every Thursday, an insight shared on social media maybe every other day. Maybe an in-person talk once per month. The medium matters far less than the consistency. It's called pressure testing, and it's how you transform mere expertise into authority. And here's why. Authority is built on predictability and on trust and on respect and, of course, on knowledge. Not saying it's not. People trust what they can count on. When your audience knows that every week you're going to show up and you're going to deliver something valuable, well, then you begin to occupy real estate in their mind. that no competitor, no algorithm can easily displace. You become part of their routine, part of the thought pattern, and people protect their routines. I know one of the objections, because I hear it all the time, Blaine, I want to put out content. I just don't think I'm ready for it yet. I'm a perfectionist. Friends, perfectionism is a poverty strategy. It's the strategy of the weak and the insecure. And I'm sorry if that's you, but perfectionists love to pat themselves on the back and think that that title makes them somehow superior to those who aren't afraid to put something out into the world when it's, say, only 80% finished. Done trumps perfect. And while you're polishing a turd, somebody else who's slightly less informed than you, but significantly less precious, if you will, about their output is building an audience and building trust and building authority and logging results and receipts in real time. They're not waiting for perfect. They're iterating in public. They're failing forward much faster, which allows them to gather feedback to do what with? To make real-time changes. That's the benefit of feedback. And the audience and the authority is growing while yours doesn't exist. Done and done consistently beats perfect every single time. That's pillar 2. Pillar 3, becoming an authority. Own your story and stop sanitizing it. This is the pillar that most people skip, and I think it's actually the most powerful one, because AI can generate content. It does it beautifully and quickly and at scale. In fact, we're all kind of getting sick of all the AI slop content that people are putting out. But what it absolutely cannot do is generate your lived experience. It hasn't made the specific mistakes you've made. It doesn't have the scars on your body from the accidents that you've gotten in that led to the education and information you have. It hasn't learned the specific lessons that you've learned the hard way. It hasn't walked the specific journey that you've walked, the real journey, not the polished version that you put on LinkedIn or Instagram that brought you to where you are today. That's yours and yours alone. And no AI trained on existing data can produce it because it doesn't exist anywhere in that data. Your lived experience doesn't exist in the AI data. Your life, your lived experience, and your human story is your most differentiated and potentially your strongest asset. And most people are too afraid to use it. They want to share the highlight reel, the wins, the Instagram-worthy photos and information, the credentials, the accomplishments. But what actually builds trust with an audience is it's all the other stuff, the real stuff, the failures, the mistakes, the pivots, the doubts, and the learning moments from making those mistakes. Real humans want to hear about the time you were completely wrong about something and then had to rebuild it from scratch. I've been building businesses since I was 15 years old, working in my father's grocery store. And I have failed at lots and lots of things. In fact, I continue to fail. I've made decisions that have cost me lots and lots of money, relationships, and lots of sleep. And I talk about those things all the time. And I found that those things are the stories people remember. Not the time that I got something perfectly right, which is rare, but the time that I got it spectacularly wrong, and then what I learned from it. The times that I made mistakes that cost me thousands to hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's what people lean in for. That's what makes them feel like you understand them because you've been where they are, and in some cases, where they want to go. But you first need to mine your own personal experiences for the lessons and the teachable point of view. Remember point number 1. Start to document those insights and lessons until a coherent, unifying set of lessons and principles begin to materialize. Be clear. Know the story and the subsequent lesson or lessons and the teachable point of view from those lessons. And then share your story and those lessons, the real ones, not the fake ones, not the made up ones. Stop sanitizing those things for social media highlight reels. People are tired of it. It's slop. Your story is the most powerful thing you have. It's what sets you on the path to becoming an authority. And I'm not telling you to just post more of your meals and your vacations on social media saying, Blaine, this is the real me. You told me to post the real me. Stop sanitizing my story. No, friends, that's not authority building. That's just being a sheep, doing what everybody else is doing on social media. If anything, that kind of stuff is diminishing your authority by oversharing what the rest of the world simply doesn't need to know about you. No, I'm encouraging you to share the lessons and a teachable point of view. That means having an opinion, even if it's polarizing, even if it's controversial. If you have the data to back it up or the information and the articulation capability to back up your teachable point of view, it matters. I'm encouraging you to share the lessons and the teachable point of view that is going to set you apart from others who might be recognized as experts in your field. Now, let me share a word of encouragement if these words haven't already been. For those of you who are immediately thinking, Blaine, my life just isn't that interesting. I get it. Mine isn't either. If you don't think you have anything to share with the world, friends, nobody wakes up one day with a teachable point of view. In fact, this might be the first time you've ever heard the words teachable point of view. You don't discover it. You develop it. And the only way you develop it is by paying attention to your own experiences and then being willing to talk about what you've learned from those experiences. That's what a teachable point of view is. You don't need an extraordinary life. You just need some awareness and then to start documenting it. If you've done, say, 100 appraisals, you've learned something. If you've cut 100 people's hair, you've learned something. If you've dealt with difficult clients, you've learned something. If you've made mistakes and lost deals and undercharged and overworked, got burnt out or figured out a better way to do something, you have material. If you've been married and divorced, 60% of the population, well, there's some lessons in there. If you've ever failed or succeeded at anything, you've got some lessons in you. If you've gotten married and never been divorced, well, there too are some lessons and perspective that simply needs you to figure out what the teachable points are for someone else not as far on the path as you. The problem is not that you don't have anything to share. The problem is that you've diminished and dismissed your own experiences as normal or not that interesting. But what's normal to you is often quite valuable to somebody else, especially if you're a little bit further down the path. You're 10 steps ahead of somebody in some area or some experience, guaranteed. Maybe you're just one step ahead, but I can assure you that's enough. Teaching isn't about being the best in the world. It's about being useful to somebody who isn't where you are yet. Take my word for this. I've been doing it now for 30 plus years. Your teachable point of view is simply this. What do you believe in now that you didn't believe in 5 years ago? What do you do differently now that you wish you had done sooner? What do you see in your industry that you think is wrong or broken? That's having an opinion. That's it, friends. That's your content. That becomes your authority. And here's the part most people don't want to hear. Nobody cares how interesting your life is. They care if what you're saying helps them see something differently or do something better. You don't need a better story. You don't need to be traveling around the world in Instagram-worthy photos. You need to stop ignoring the one that you already have. The hard truth that just also happens to be the good news is that it's not about you, ever. It's about what you have to teach somebody else that is going to make their life, their journey, and their experience that much better. Start talking, start sharing, start refining. Authority isn't given to the most interesting person. It's earned by the person willing to speak about their experiences and share the lessons that they've learned along the way that might help somebody else with that same need. Every nonfiction book you've ever read that you got some kind of value from was written by somebody who just happened to have some lessons for you in some area of interest for you. The author was likely somebody who simply had the guts to share their own experience and teachable points of view, regardless of whether or not they thought of themselves as the expert on the topic. You don't have to wait to be knighted or anointed by somebody else as the right person to be sharing your experiences and your teachable points of view. If what you're teaching doesn't resonate with somebody, they're just not your audience. They're not your demographic. It's that simple. That's pillar 3. Pillar 4, serve a specific audience deeply rather than a general audience broadly. Now, I know this runs counter to the instinct that most people have when they're trying to grow something. The instinct is to cast the widest possible net, reach the most people, appeal to the broadest audience. More people means more opportunity, right? Wrong. Authorities are not known by everyone. They are known deeply by someone. They are known deeply by a specific group of people who feel like this person was created specifically for them because the authority made them feel that way. Like this person understands their situation, their struggles, their aspirations, their industry, their language, and in a way that nobody else does. I can't tell you how many times over the last 10 years, one of our podcast listeners or coaching students has reached out after listening to an episode and said, Blaine, you were talking about me in that episode, weren't you? In fact, it's one of the highest forms of flattery because it tells me that the information in the lessons landed and I'm speaking at least that one person's language. And to be honest, that's really all that matters. The more specific you are about who you serve and what you serve them with, the more powerful your authority becomes with that group. And a smaller audience that trusts you deeply will almost always outperform a larger audience that barely even knows you exist. And in terms of, say, revenue or referrals, in terms of impact and influence, which is what this is all about, depth of trust beats breadth of reach almost every time. This is also, by the way, one of the only competitive advantages that AI genuinely cannot replace or replicate at scale. AI can speak to everyone, but it cannot speak to your specific people in your specific voice with your specific story and your specific understanding of exactly what they're going through. When you build that depth of connection with a defined audience, you've got something that is genuinely, structurally irreplaceable. Now, let me bring this home because I don't want you to walk away from this episode with an interesting idea that goes nowhere. I want you to walk away with a decision. AI is not your competitor. You're not competing against AI. AI is the environment that you're simply operating in. It's not going away anytime soon, if ever. It's the new terrain. It's like any shift in terrain. It creates winners and it creates losers. The losers are going to be the people who keep trying to run the old race on this new ground. The winners, on the other hand, are going to be the people who read the new terrain correctly and they make adjustments. In this environment, expertise has become a commodity. Not completely worthless. I want to be precise about that. But it's simply a commodity that is available, accessible, replicable, and downloadable all the time and at scale 24 hours a day. Important? Yes. Scarce? No. Authority, on the other hand, is becoming the premium asset, the trusted voice, the consistent presence, the real story, the shared openly and honestly with a specific audience over time. That, my friends, is scarce. It's irreplaceable. And that is what people, your clients, your customers, and your audience are hungry for in a world that is increasingly drowning in AI-generated everything, with most of it being what we would call slop. No, the people who win over the next decade are not going to be the ones who know the most. Remember, information and expertise is becoming a commodity. No, the winners are going to be the ones who are trusted the most and can communicate in the most effective ways. The ones who show up consistently and speak their truth boldly, who own their story honestly, and they serve a specific group of people deeply, and they have an opinion. Build the expertise, of course, but become the authority as well. They're not the same thing. That is the game right now, my friends. So I'll end this with the same question that I opened with. And your answer should be different now than it was, say, 30 minutes ago. Do you consider yourself an expert or an authority? Because if the answer is just an expert, well, we've been talking about it. You know what to do next. So if this one landed for you, let me know in the comments. Tell me what industry you're in and what you're building your authority around and what you're going to start building it around after listening to this episode. Friends, if you're not subscribed yet, hopefully I've earned it in this episode. If not yet, I get it. I'd certainly love to earn it. We do this almost every week, building businesses, building authority, building lives that don't require you to trade your best years for a paycheck. So until next time, my friends, do more, be more, live more, give more. See you on the next one.